What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Real Bodybuilding Podcast. This is episode number 96, and I am with Mr. Broderick Chavez. How are you, sir?
Sir, I am well, and thank you for having me.
So I've gotten a lot of requests to have you on. A lot of people think that you would have a lot of insight into my main question that I want to ask you is how to get huge. But before we get into how to get huge, I want to get a little bit of your background. So how did you get into all this? Maybe you can tell me a little bit of history of your own athleticism.
Sure. I will happily do so, although I must say that that's probably my least favorite topic. I just don't love to talk about myself or my exploits. I am literally one of those rare stories where I never wanted to do anything else. I never had any other aspirations. It sounds like a really corny story, but it is absolutely true. I was sitting in my grandparents' living room somewhere in the very early 70s. I was born in 71. So 74, 75, so I was truly a child. And I saw Vasily Alexia, Ken Patera, Serge Redding at the Munich World Championships, Olympic weightlifting. And I literally looked at adults and I said, lifting weights is a job? That's a job? I was like, that's the perfect job. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And everybody did. They're like, oh yeah, settle down, kid. It'll be fine. And literally from that moment, every single day of my life, I said, can I lift weights today? Can I lift? Am I allowed to lift weights? Like, can I start my job? And, for years, like 5 or many, no, settle down. You're too young to lift weights. Settle down. On my 10th birthday, Christmas, or not actually, a combination of my birthday and Christmas. My birthday's in November. Christmas Day, 1981. I was 10 years old. I was given a gift certificate to the local gym, the local fitness center. Yeah. And I literally went running down the street with this piece of paper on Christmas Day in the snow to the gym. The owner of the gym was in there squatting. He let me in. I worked out in a commercial fitness center for the first time, Christmas Day, 1981. Never looked back.
Do you remember what you trained?
I did. He was squatting, and so did I.
No, your first workout was squatting at 10 years old?
Well, let me tell you an even more insightful piece to that concept. This was in Reading, Pennsylvania. Really, at the time, very industrial, pretty, blue collar, hardcore town. And I walked into the squat rack, and there was a picture askew of Ken Patera in the bottom position of a squat of an Olympic lift, front squat rack with the big aviator glasses on, the classic Ken Patera picture. Yeah. And he was held to the wall, not with thumbtacks, but with 23 gauge cattle syringes.
So that was the environment you grew up in.
So that was my immersion. That was my day one. And it basically went downhill from there.
Did it? When you start training at 10, were you so in love with it that you just went full bore all the way through, or was there ever a dip?
There was never even a momentary hiccup. There was never a moment where I didn't spend every spare minute of my time, every spare minute of my consciousness, plotting, scheming, dreaming, nothing. And I was a little bit of a prodigy. Like I said, I don't like to talk about myself, but I was a very good early teen bodybuilder. And I caught the eye of some notable people. I got immersed with Tom Platz, Dr. Fred Hatfield, Tom Dieters, who was the editor of Muscle and Fitness in the 90s. Maybe the late 80s, maybe not the 90s. But I had a very, very strong support group, really, really high level of immersion with some really connected and also intellectually valuable people. Yeah. And not only did they help me develop physically, which happened, but they really impressed upon me the need for intellectual development to match my physical development. And that pushed me to, learn biology. I finally wound up at University of Arizona, collected a major in biology, a minor in chemistry, really pursued that. And then I'm skipping over the competitive bits because I don't think people want to hear about like bullshit. Teenage.
I kind of do. So you competed in bodybuilding?
Yeah, my first bodybuilding show was 1988, spring of '88. I was well and truly natural at the time. Took second in Delaware, where I live, the state of Delaware. By then, I was living in Delaware. Then competed mostly in the AAU. It was right at that divide, NPC AAU. I actually went to the AAU America, Teenage Mr. America in Atlantic City in 90 and 91. I was good, but not great. For a number of reasons. Again, I don't like to make mistakes, or make excuses, but I could have been better had I done certain things that I didn't. Looking back on that, I realized that. Went to the University of Arizona, collected a degree in biology and chemistry, and because of university, I put off competing with that classic mindset you get, like, well, I'll study and I'll just spend my time, I'll just eat, train, take drugs, I'll get big, and I'll come back and I'll be ready for the pros.
Yeah.
And the reality is, the longer I stayed away from it, the less important competing became to me. And the more I just found the intellectual side interesting.
Yeah.
And it was neat to realize, like, hey, I don't have to fucking diet for 20 weeks to go. I can just eat and train. And it just became, instead of a competitive endeavor, it became a lifestyle. Which is, to be fair, something that wore off on me from Tom Platz, who, although he was very competitive, it was his mindset that it's not, I am a competitive bodybuilder, I am a bodybuilder. Yeah. There was a difference, almost a religious difference, and I tried to embrace that.
Yeah. When you were coming up and you said you can do this for a living, did you ever compete because you wanted to compete, or were you still just trying to make a living doing something you love doing?
That's actually a question that I even ask myself, because it's hard at times to be as honest as you believe you are. Mm-hmm. And I look back at that, and I'm not sure if I was competing because that's what bodybuilders did. Like, that was like you lifted weights, you dieted, you put on tights, you got on stage. That was bodybuilding. Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure if I was doing it just because I was filling the role of I'm a bodybuilder, or if I really had some, like, utopian idea of, like, if I could look like that. Yeah. I don't think that's quite what it was. I think, honestly, I was just playing the role of bodybuilder, and it took me the first 20 years to figure out what a bodybuilder really was. And it wasn't the guy on stage. It was the other 364 days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I asked the question because I wonder sometimes to myself. I love bodybuilding and I love everything about it. And I've done it for 20 years, but
sure.
When I started bodybuilding, I started really late. I started at 20. And when I started, I said to myself, I just want to make a living working out.
Right.
That was kind of my mindset. And then the only way to do that for me was bodybuilding, whereas you took the academic route, which is a little different. But so what career did you end up taking on after university?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I went to the university, and here's where I made a really, I don't want to say egregious error, but I didn't do myself any favors with this. I went to school with this very high-minded, almost dreamy idea that the books and computers and people at the university held the secrets. Mm-hmm. I felt almost like I was on some sort of religious pilgrimage, and if I could just find the right text, I could know the secret, and I could unravel the secret of anabolism. Mm-hmm. And so I went to school almost with this going to Mecca idea that I'm going to somehow become enlightened and just be able to do my thing. So I didn't go to school with this idea of I want to be a doctor, a lawyer, a biologist. I went to school to just steal their secrets. That was literally, I'm not joking. That's how I went to school with this
You went to school. You went to school to try to learn how to be huge, pretty much.
I did, but not actually more than that, though. But yes. And then a very fortunate thing happened in the midst of this basic debacle that was education for me. the University of Arizona happened to have a very, very well-developed and proficient human performance lab. I happened to hit it off with the people running the lab. My enthusiasm, my basically haranguing them, my, a number of other things, plus my willingness to cross the border into Mexico and buy vast amounts of drugs, that helped as well. But nonetheless, I was very popular in that circle. Yeah. And so I was immersed in the practical application of human performance, muscle biopsies, VO2 max, lactate studies. So I was doing this stuff. And because I was doing this stuff, I was face to face with the athletes. And though I didn't have the education of, say, my professors, obviously, what I had was something that turns out to be incredibly unique. I had enough of the intellectual side that I could speak their language, but I had enough of the gym side that I could speak their language. And I basically wound up becoming this conduit between athlete and intellectual. Mm-hmm. And so everything passed through me, and I just picked up little kernels and crumbs. And so by the time I was done a 3.5-year stint at university, I was a really good coach because I could talk both directions. Yeah.
I find it really interesting you said that. I've had one of the things I try and do on this podcast is try and eliminate it's all science or it's all bro science or anecdotal, and try and tell people that it's both. Like, we need a little bit of science to get us an idea, but then we have to make sure it works in reality. So 100%. So now that you're kind of on both sides of the fence, is that kind of how you feel about it? Is both of them are valuable?
Not in a way. I actually, I'm going to go a little off the reservation, but bear with me. I have some very strong influences in sports, like I mentioned, Tom Platz, Fred Hatfield, etc. However, my major overarching intellectual hero, if you will, was a physicist named Richard Feynman. Mm-hmm. Completely okay if you don't know who that is. It's a niche thing. Yeah. But he was literally, an Einstein caliber physicist. But he had one thing that other people did not. He had this incredible ability to explain things. He popularized physics by explaining it to people that otherwise couldn't understand it. Yeah. Anyway, the reason I bring him up is he had a very overarching mindset. He said, it does not matter how elegant your theory is. It does not matter how beautiful the numbers work out. He said, if you try it in the real world and it doesn't work, it is wrong.
Interesting.
And that sticks with me. And I feel that sports is the test bed for biological sciences, to the point where sometimes we're trying shit even before the scientists think it's a thing. Yeah. And then long after the fact, scientists come around and go, doing loads of below 50% 1RM might build up metabolites and could have benefits. And then you look and you're like, yeah, I've been squatting for 30 reps for 20 years, asshole. Yeah. Thanks for telling me why it works. Go back to the lab.
Yeah. I feel like that sometimes. I feel like I've come to appreciate science more as my career has has gotten later into my later years, but I definitely still feel that the things we do in the gym those are the laws. Like, yep. I don't care what you tell me the book says. If I do it in the gym and it's working, I'm not going to change it. But I also feel like a lot of things, like, we're kind of guinea pigs for a lot of things that are popular now. I mean, like 100%. People talk about the keto diet, and I know bodybuilders don't necessarily go keto, but we've been doing low carb for decades.
You kidding me? Robbie Robinson was doing that in the late 60s. Yeah, exactly. Late 60s, 100%.
Exactly. And all of a sudden,
tuna all day long. Yeah, 100%.
And all of a sudden now the keto diet is like this new thing. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We've already been on that train.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that you see both sides of it that way. Okay. So did you get into any powerlifting at all, or was it just bodybuilding?
Well, I struggle to talk about me, but I'll work it in there. All through the competitive bodybuilding, I also was a competitive powerlifter. As I mentioned, I did my first bodybuilding show in '88. I actually did my first powerlifting event in '84. I was literally 13 years old. I won the Teenage Nationals in the now defunct ADFPA. It's now what is USAPL or whatever the fucking alphabet soup of shit. But I went on to actually be the APF chairman for the state of Delaware, and I held meets here. I was a very good powerlifter. As I said, I don't love to talk about myself, but I think I can wield that level of arrogance. I have squatted 800 pounds in a belt and knee wraps, legal belt and knee wraps at 220 pounds body weight.
Wow.
Good bench press. I have a bench press double body weight in every weight class except 242. I started at 132 in my teens, and I went through every weight class up to 220. I did a few meets at 242 where I was not very good, but it's just because of my geometry. I'm 5'5". 242 at 5'5", just unfucking wieldy. Deadlift was not my friend, because I got these little baby fucking hands. No, you don't understand. The camera's doing it justice. I don't even like to talk about it. It's like a fucking birthday thing. You ever see the commercial with the guy that catches the football with little baby hands?
I think so. Yeah.
My hands are smaller than that guy.
Okay. I wanted to ask you. You said something, and I don't know if you want to get into it, but you said you knew. Well, first I want to ask you, when you were powerlifting, were you natural?
I'll sum that up. Yes. Then no.
Okay.
I did my very first course of farm just after my 16th birthday. So December. Let's see. I would have been 16 in 87.
Yeah.
So December of 87 was my first course of anabolics.
Okay. I want to come back to that, but there's another question I was thinking about. When you said, and I don't know if you want to get into it, but when you said, I didn't think I had what it took to be a professional bodybuilder, what did you mean? What were you missing?
Well, here's the problem. The problem is kind of the almost the opposite problem that people have today. Today, every gym, there's gear, everybody, and there's always not like that biggest guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Like that guy always thinks the world of himself because he's the biggest guy in the room.
Mm-hmm.
I was always the smallest guy in the room.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would walk into a room and it's fucking Fred Hatfield's got 1,000-pound squat. Next to him is Tom. Sitting next to him eating chicken is Tom Platz, who could squat 500 for 25 fucking reps. And then I'd move over here and it would be Tom's training partner who could do 40 fucking chin-ups. And it was just I was always the asshole. Almost this like I forgot that the worst pro in the world was much closer to me than to them.
Yeah.
It was a matter of perspective. I was just immersed in this, like, can you imagine being, I don't want to like martyr myself because I feel like an asshole, but I look back on it and I'm like, how the fuck did I survive, going to the gym with these people, getting my ass kicked, then going to lunch and having these conversations about intellectual material and getting my ass kicked. Like I literally I would go home and I was probably one of the top 20 teens in the country, but I couldn't realize that because I'm comparing myself to the top 20 best athletes on earth. And I just had like such an inferiority complex. I just would sit at night and just sweat and be like, what the fuck am I not doing? I'm taking the drugs, I'm lifting the weights. I'm like, what the fuck? And it took a long time for me to realize that was actually a gift, not a curse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it did take a little bit. I
was just going to say, it goes to the point of, wouldn't you think that you would have gotten better being around such greats as, those guys?
But I did. That's what I didn't realize is the reason I was that good. Never mind the fact that I didn't internalize it. That's my own fault.
Yeah.
But I was that good because I was trying not to be hind tit in a room full of people I didn't even belong in.
Yeah. So what you're saying is you probably could have been a bodybuilder, but because your self-sabotage kept you away from it.
Correct. Plus, then I started to realize that the actual act of competing was a lot less important to me than I thought it was.
Yeah.
So those two things together, yes. And there was a period, in my 30s where I was, much more at ease and I realized like, hey, I really could do this.
Yeah.
Like I could, whip myself together, probably get a, like a sub-masters title, probably in a try or two. I could do this.
Yeah.
And I thought about it. I looked at it and I was just like, you know what? Why would I do that? Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
yeah. So you've kind of answered the question that a lot of people ask me is, do you have to compete to be a bodybuilder?
There's where people need to go back. I don't like to do the hero worship thing. I don't like to any of that, but that's where people need to become intimate with the mind of Tom Platz. Tom Platz was, in my mind, the greatest bodybuilder that ever walked the planet. No, he did not have the greatest physique. No, he was not a Mr. Olympia. No. But when I think of a bodybuilder, when I think about somebody who just sits and just thinks about bodybuilding and moves like a bodybuilder, and he would organize his travel so that he could get to gyms and to drugs and to training partners and to beaches so that he could be a fucking bodybuilder.
I see what you mean.
That's that. He's like, no, I can't go to Spain before I go to Germany. I got to go to Germany before Spain because Germany has this gym that I need to train at so that you can see me in Spain the way I want to look. That's a bodybuilder, not a fucking, and also, and please forgive me if I unintentionally besmirch you. I don't mean to, but modern bodybuilders, they walk around, they're fucking pale and they're a little fucking porcine pink. Tom was fucking, hair was dyed, legs were shaved, skin was tan every day of the year. Tom was a fucking bodybuilder. Never caught him looking like a fucking swollen, fucking pregnant pig. No. It was a fucking bodybuilder.
Okay, but wait a minute. I gotta push back for a minute because you said that it didn't matter if you got on stage,
correct,
to be a bodybuilder, not a competitive bodybuilder, to be a bodybuilder. So all the things you're mentioning are related to his appearance.
Correct, because Tom was a competitive bodybuilder.
Okay, but I'm asking you,
now, could you live the lifestyle of a bodybuilder and never get to single-digit body fat, never tan, never put on trunks? Of course. But again, it comes down to what exact road, what lane on the highway have you chosen? Tom was competing in the Olympia yearly, and he made his living. Keyword: he made his living going around selling the product. Tom Platz. Yeah. To do that, he needed to look a certain way.
But what I'm asking is, it's kind of a philosophical question: is can you be a bodybuilder if you don't compete? These guys, I've said it before, like these guys that get up at 5 a.m. and they're sweats and they go and they kill it at the gym and they've never ever stepped on stage, have no desire to. Is that guy still a bodybuilder?
I mean, ultimately that comes down to your definition of things. It would fit my definition. Yes.
Yeah.
Vic Richards, the Barbarian Brothers, loads of people that lived a bodybuilding lifestyle and let's use modern language, self-identified as bodybuilders.
Okay, that makes sense. So I agree with you there. Now, going back to the Tom Platz thing, you're saying he looked perfect all the time. His hair was always done. His tan was always done. Isn't there something though that one of the things I like about modern day bodybuilding, and I've done this, is I show people what it's really like when you're not looking perfect.
Sure.
Isn't that valuable for people to see that sometimes you do got to bulk up, sometimes you do got to put on a little bit of weight, sometimes you're not going to look your best.
And therein, I think, lies just some of the probably partially generational differences and partially just the way you internalize what the definition of the thing is. Okay. When Tom was out of shape, he hid. You didn't see him.
Yeah. But that's not a, that's
in your mind, try and go through. Can you even, I can only think of one picture of him where he was out of shape.
No. And I think that's a cool thing in a way, but I also feel like one of the things I kind of preach is that we need to show people what it is in the reality of it. So instead of hiding, I'm like, look, 75% of the time I look chubby.
Right.
So it's like,
I absolutely understand. And again, I actually, I'm embarrassed to say I don't know your age. I know from your competitive record, you can't be super young.
No, I'm 42.
Okay. You're old enough to remember a world, before the internet.
Yeah.
it was a lot easier to disappear for 2 or 3 months 25, 30 years ago.
Yes.
It's just, that's how fast things move. Like, so today, where literally you can't hide for 24 hours, no. It requires you to be a bit more honest about where you actually are in time. So I think some of that might just be the digital nature of the world we live in now. And I don't necessarily know that the old way, I'm not one of those like, back in my day, I'm not that asshole. I'm not saying it was better or it's worse now or anywhere in the middle. I'm just saying that the reality is photo shoots and things were clumped together and you could be, somewhat anonymous in the middle. Yeah. And guys used that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't want to get into the conversation of better or worse either. That's not, I just find it interesting. It's interesting to me I enjoy showing the bad side of things, I guess.
I'm also old enough and of the persuasion that I actually was deeply immersed also in the high intensity guys. I actually met, Ellington Darden, Casey Viator, both the Menser brothers. I've personally met and communicated with those those people. And Arthur Jones is a bit of an enigma. I actually know his son, Gary Jones.
Okay.
And probably my favorite quote in all of bodybuilding was Arthur Jones, who said, "Bodybuilding is a wonderful and beautiful sport. The only problem is it's infested with bodybuilders."
Okay. All right. So I want to turn to let's turn to diet before we turn to anything else, because I feel like diet is probably the most important component, but I'm not sure if you do. So let me ask you that. People ask me that all the time. What's the most important? Diet, training, drugs? What do you think the most important facet of what we do is?
All right. I have a very solid answer for you, but first, a shameless plug, but it actually plays into the conversation. I actually wrote an ebook on nutrition, and it's actually called Post-it Note Sports Nutrition, because I've often been quoted as saying nutrition so simple you can write it on a fucking Post-it note. And somebody called my bluff, and I was like, "All right, fuck you, I'll do it," and I did. So I wrote a book that revolves around a handful of Post-it notes.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, don't misunderstand and lead you to this belief that I think nutrition's nonsensical or it's not. But the basic bullet points are that simple.
Yeah.
However, talking about Richard Feynman and his physics, Richard Feynman had a great way of thinking of things. He would do thought experiments. He would just create, if I did this, what would happen? He would just run it through in his head as if you were in a lab doing an experiment. Mm-hmm. So here's a thought experiment for you. Let's take 2 twin brothers, 18 years old. They're identical. Same hair, same face. They have the same haircut. They weigh the same. Okay. We'll play devil's advocate on my side and say, I give brother A weight training program, and I tell him to do, 3 days a week, 5 sets of 5 in a squat, some accessory, 5 sets of 5 in a bench and some accessory, and 5 sets of 5 in a deadlift and some accessory. And I say, all right, you do that for 60 days. And you give brother B the perfect bodybuilding diet. He's going to have, chicken and rice and broccoli and MCT oil and, Molly McButter, and he's going to have the fucking perfect diet. Yeah. Okay. We run that through, but he doesn't touch a weight. He eats perfect. He lifts weights. Oh, you run that through for 60 days. Okay. Who's bigger?
Well, okay, but wait, but
but I understand.
All right, we'll play it through. The guy who trained,
right? A bodybuilder lifts weights. Yeah. But to do science, and this is where I run loggerheads with the bro science crowd. To do science, you must eliminate variables. If you want to say what's most important, then you have to isolate it.
True.
And if you isolate it, lifting weights wildly outweighs a perfect diet. Okay. And to be fair, if you look at, for instance, the Basin study, taking steroids without lifting weights or changing your diet works almost as well as lifting weights on the base level.
Okay.
So the reality is I would put it in order of training first, because without training, there's no need for drugs.
Okay.
Drugs second, and then diet last.
Really?
However, I would actually put genetics in front of all of that.
Okay. That's really confusing though, because to me, the drugs are an amplifier of whatever you're doing. So let's say you're not eating anything. Let's say you eat a bag of chips for dinner. I'm gonna take your extremes.
Yep.
So person A trains, person B trains. Person A eats a bag of chips every day for dinner, and that's it. But takes steroids. Mm-hmm. Person B eats a proper diet, 6 meals a day, the whole bit, and doesn't take steroids. Who looks better at the end of 3 months? Come on.
No, I accept your answer, except that it's just too extreme. You really
you did the same thing. You said if one guy trains,
you could lift weights and eat normal, and you could eat like a bodybuilder and not lift weights. Starving for a protracted period of time is very unlikely. But I mean, let's also factor in this. I'm also enough of an adult to admit that my entire education, my entire existence basically revolves around drugs. So I have a very drug-centric perspective. Yeah. I'm going to admit that might be fogging my reality, but I do sincerely think that you must have nutrition or you die. I'm a biologist. I understand that. But I think in the presence of nutrition, I think diet is the least important variable in the middle level. Now, on preparing for the Olympia, that's not accurate. Let's be fair.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
But so for that middle layer, you're getting 2,000 calories a day. You're not going to die. In that zone, I think diet is the least important.
Okay, I see what you mean. So, okay, well, let's discuss things on an optimal level.
Sure.
Because people that watch the show are, either trying to compete or want to learn the perfect way and then kind of go from there.
Sure.
So what do you want to start with? Nutrition, training, or drugs?
Nutrition's easy. We'll start there. I can just rattle stuff off, or you can ask questions as you want.
Well, I guess I want to ask, one of the debates me and a friend got into recently was being perfect, which is, let's say you're on a 6 meals. What'd you say?
It's foolish, and it doesn't exist. The perfect is a sliding scale. There is no destination perfect.
Okay, let me give you an example then, and maybe my terminology is off, but let me give you an example. So you're eating 6 meals a day. You're on a good bodybuilding diet. You're doing, rice, fish, chicken, the whole thing, right?
Yep.
The other guy is doing the same thing, but he throws in some junk here and there. This is a debate me and a friend have. He says that the guy who's on the perfect diet or the clean diet or whatever terminology you want to use is going to end up better at the end of the year. Is that true? Would you consider that to be the correct thinking?
I think there's a lot of gray area there. I think in the way you laid it out, if it was just a numerical scenario, this guy was perfect for 300 days a year. This guy was perfect for 360 days a year. Yeah, this guy's going to look better than that guy.
Okay.
However, there's a lot of gray area in that, like the cheat meal bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't believe in cheat meals, kind of the way I don't believe in fucking unicorns. They don't exist. I believe there are people that eat like assholes periodically, but I don't consider that a cheat meal. If it's built into your program, it's not cheating. Cheating is doing something that's not in your program. That's what cheating means. Let's use words to mean what they mean.
True. Okay.
So if I rate you a diet and I say once every 15 days, eat whatever the fuck you want, and you do, you didn't cheat. You followed the plan.
True.
So maybe I'm being pedantic, but maybe I'm also just using words like they mean.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
No, it is.
So I do believe there is a mathematical connection between the more days you meet your plan, the more likely your plan is to manifest in the outcome you intended. I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah. So I want to get into proteins first. Then we'll get into carbs and fats. But does it matter what source and timing of my protein?
With a few rare exceptions, timing is irrelevant. Source matters, but I think not in the way people believe. Like the perfect remark, people believe that there is a perfect protein. Oh, whey isolate is better than casein, so I'll eat nothing but whey. Doesn't work that way. This is a subject that we could talk about for about 9 hours, so I'm going to be very brief, but try to intimate the basic understanding. Everyone is vaguely familiar with the English language because we're using it. There are 20-something letters in the English language, and you can arrange them into thousands and tens of thousands of words. In human biology, there is 20-something amino acids, and you can arrange them into tens of thousands of different words, or in this case, proteins.
Sure.
Okay. If you were playing the game of Scrabble and you always got the same letters every time you reached into the bag, you would be limited. You could spell certain words over and over and over, but there you have no X's or Q's or what the fuck ever. There are words you just cannot spell.
Gotcha.
So even though that's a high quality protein, it has some deficiency. So the way you conquer that deficiency is actually very counterintuitive. You do it with variety. By reaching in this other bag over here, you get the random Q and U and X. Now you could spell the weird words that you otherwise couldn't.
Sure.
So the reality is the core of your diet should come from high quality, high biological value proteins, beef and up. But you should go out of your way to get some fringe proteins, shellfish, soy, evil gluten, all those random places that you otherwise wouldn't look, because that's where the interesting niche letters hide.
So is that variety necessary every day, or is it like you need a variety in a week, or like how often is that variety important?
See, that's actually a really insightful question. And the reality is variety is a concept of over time.
Okay.
Do you do it one serving every day? Do you do it one meal every week? It doesn't matter. It's over time. When I look at your bank account, I can't tell when you put the money in there. I can only tell how much money is in there.
Yeah. Okay.
You open your wallet and show me your money. I don't know when you made it. I just know right now you have this much money.
Sure.
Same thing.
Okay. So, and then you mentioned timing doesn't matter. And I guess it's a little confusing to me. So, why are guys eating every 2 hours?
Okay. You say timing doesn't matter. And I said, with some rare exceptions. Now, when you say, why are guys eating every 2 hours? That's not really a timing issue. I know, again, you're thinking, when I hear timing, I hear I did this, and then I had to eat because of it. That's timing.
Okay.
I took this drug, I did this workout, now I must eat at this time or the wheels fall off the wagon. That's timing. Okay. Now, when you say, why am I eating every 2 hours? It's because you're a gigantic motherfucker, and to eat that much food in 2 or 3 meals, you would not be able to get through it. It's unworkable. So you're breaking meals into smaller portions simply to make it workable.
So it doesn't matter. So if I'm taking in 400 grams of protein a day, it doesn't matter if I eat it all at once or I eat it in.
Well, a good friend of mine's Lyle, I say doctor, he's not a doctor. Actually, Lyle McDonald's a good friend of mine. And we debate this topic all the time. And the reality is 1 is too few, and somewhere at the high end, there's too many. But again, in practical parlance, is anybody going to eat 400 grams of protein in 1 meal? No. Probably not.
No, no.
The reality, I understand that you have to take it to the extremes to prove your point, and well played. But the reality is, anyone who's going to eat 400 grams of protein is probably going to do it in no less than 4 meals.
Yeah.
In which case, space them evenly throughout the day, and you are fucking covered.
Okay. Just for the record, I'm not trying to prove any points. I'm just trying to get.
I very much. That's the whole. To me, and if I get overly aggressive, I do apologize.
No, it's okay.
To me, intellectual dialogue is a combat sport. Like, to me, that's how I feel about it.
I'm not competing with you, man. You have way too much history and knowledge for me to compete with. I'm trying to get down to the nitty gritty for people that are watching, because there's so much conflicting. There's so many conflicting theories that I'm trying to break down to the basics.
Here's how I would boil it down. And And like I said, Lyle McDonald and I have conversations about this all the time. He actually wrote a book on protein, so he's far and above me in expertise. And the short answer is anything below 3 is suspicious in terms of meals per day, and anything above 6 is suspicious.
Okay, but I guess the more important question I want to get to is it going to impact my performance or muscle growth if I have 3 or 6?
The answer is it doesn't look like it. The data does not support that. However, again, you now have to figure the consequences of meal size.
Yeah.
If moving from 6 meals to 3 meals makes the meal so big that your literal physical performance is hampered, you don't feel like going to the gym, you're immobile, you're bloated. Now, could that manifest in a decrement in training over time? Yeah, it really could. So you could make the argument that smaller meals is better, but it's not really because of the meals. It's simply because it's more comfortable.
It's comfortable. Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. So there are days where I only get in 5 meals. And if I know I'm only going to get in 5, I might add a little bit to each meal.
Of course.
So in that sense, I'm fine.
I 100% endorse that. And that's how I would coach you to do that. Yes.
Okay. Getting into carbs, do carb sources matter, or are all clean carbs created equal? When I say clean, I mean like natural sources. So like a sweet potato versus rice versus, is that okay, or is it different?
This is where, again, people need to understand that science is much more specific language than they're willing to admit. When you say are all carbs created equal, what I hear is all carbohydrates created equal. Therefore, you're asking me, is the glucose in this potato the same as the glucose in this rice? The answer is yes. On a chemical level, glucose is glucose, C6H12O6. Glucose is fucking glucose.
Yeah.
However, this glucose is in a fucking potato, and that comes with fiber and potassium and a whole bunch of shit.
Yeah.
This glucose over here is in white rice, which is not much else. So there is a difference. There's going to be a difference in the accompanying nutrition, the accompanying fiber, the accompanying micronutrition, the ions. So there is difference. And then it gets even worse. Based on age, race, sex, ethnicity, you may or may not tolerate certain carbohydrate sources as well as others. If you're Middle Eastern, you may have no exposure to wheat genetically. Wheat didn't come from the Middle East. It came from China and northern latitudes. So I know. The Middle Eastern individual might find that root sources are more agreeable to their particular person. So it's that individualized on many levels. Just like milk is a great example of that same thing. Milk was not something common to the African continent. It's not surprising that people of African extraction have a little bit of problem digesting milk. They were the last people on the globe to embrace milk.
Yeah, I get it. So then when you say, okay, fine, if we take glucose and fructose, then is one going to work?
Now there's a difference.
Yeah. So is one going to work better for muscle performance than another?
How much science do you want in the next 2 minutes?
As much as you can give me with it still being understandable.
All right. I just rattled off, just being a dick, I rattled off the chemical formula for glucose. Glucose is C6H12O6. Fructose is also C6H12O6. However, at the very end is transposed. Fructose is what's called an isomer.
Okay.
It's exactly the same constituents, but it's got a slightly different organization. There is an enzyme in your body that cleaves glucose in half so that the two pieces are small enough to enter the mitochondria of a cell and be burnt. As small as sugar is in its native form, it's actually too big to get into the cell to be burnt. It has to be cut in half. The enzyme that does that, your body and every other person on earth has gobs of it. You would never run out of it. However, that enzyme happens to work right at the misspelling in the fructose, and it doesn't work on fructose.
Okay.
Therefore, you have a separate enzyme 2,3 fructonase that is responsible for cleaving fructose. Because in nature, where we actually come from, fructose was relatively speaking rare.
Okay.
Humans do not have a large reservoir of fructonase. So if you eat up to and including a certain amount of fructose, your body just deals with it like normal. Just, bring in the other guy, it cleaves it goes into the cell, it's burned. If you consume more than what's called rate limiting enzyme, if you have more fructose than you have the enzyme to break it in half, the body needs to do something else with it.
Okay.
That something else is shuttle it onto the liver to actually be converted into a triglyceride.
Okay.
Into a fat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something called the glycerol phosphate pathway.
Okay.
So the short answer is, depending on age, race, sex, ethnicity, you can tolerate somewhere around it. Now, when I say you, I might actually be lying because I'm talking to you because you're fucking gigantic. But you being a normal person, somewhere between 30 and 40 grams of fructose a day. Anything beyond that, your body can't deal with it and must do something else with it.
So that's only like a couple pieces of fruit, really. It's not really that much.
No, that's actually a good bit. When and I suggest you do this. Don't ever take anything I say at face value. Double check this. But when you, just ask Siri or ask Google how much fructose in an orange or a banana. Yeah. It's actually about half of the carbohydrate value.
Okay, that's right. I'm sorry.
The reality is it's probably 6-8 pieces of fruit. Depending on the fruit, it varies very, very much. Whether you're talking about equatorial or northern, like apples are different than pineapples.
Sure.
But the short answer is it's a pretty significant amount of fruit.
Yeah. Now,
in modern situations where you can get that much fructose in one can of cola, now the bets are off. That's a different thing.
Yeah.
Now, you did ask something that's actually interesting. You asked which is better for muscle growth. I don't want anybody to overeat fruit and get into that. Your body has nothing to do with it but store it as fat, because that's bad.
Yeah.
But in that ground level scenario from 0 to 40 grams, your liver, which is actually about the most important deal you got going, preferentially will choose fructose over glucose.
Okay.
So this, I'm not a huge fan of the anabolic window and the post-workout, whatever the fuck and all that. But if there was ever a time in the day where your body is primed to really want and use some fructose, it's then.
Okay. So that's kind of where I was going. Is my next question was into carb timing. So other than what you've just explained, throughout the rest of the day, either pre-workout or throughout the rest of the day after that, does carb timing matter?
There's two answers to that question. Question A is the middle of the bell curve, people that are not using growth hormone and insulin. And then there's the people that are.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with the first group. The answer is really no. Your body has a very, very good ability to store nuts for the winter.
Okay.
Carbs you eat at breakfast are going to hang around and be usable come, PM workout. There's very little, same thing with protein. Protein less so, but still you have something called the free amino acid pool. Your body has the ability to hold on to the shit for a bit. If it didn't, we wouldn't have survived, the first day without food in the wild. Yeah. Like the first day we walk and can't find food, we'd fucking die. That seems not to happen. That suggests the body has the ability to partition this stuff somehow.
Yeah.
As a general rule, Post-it note sports nutrition, for instance, I suggest people make their diet, divide it up evenly. I'm going to eat 3, 4, 5, 6 meals a day, divide their protein evenly, divide their carbs evenly, then take about half of the carbs from the last meal, move them to the first meal.
Okay.
As simple as that. Now you've got basically a declining carb intake over the course of the day. Why, you might ask? Well, most people tend to be busy during the day and diminish as the evening goes on.
Mm-hmm.
You get up, you go to work, or you go to the gym, or you do something. Activity requires energy. Energy comes in the form of carbohydrates. And as the sun sets, you tend to put your feet up on the sofa, play Xbox, masturbate, whatever the fuck you do in the evenings. And that takes a lot less energy.
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of energy to play Xbox. You do need a lot of energy to, fucking load trucks.
So how do you feel about if I say to you, when I drink like branch cyclic dextrin pre and during my workout, I get better performance in the gym?
Correct.
How does that play into the timing doesn't matter?
Well, there's a bunch of factors there. One, and I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass, but you are much bigger than a normal person.
Okay.
As am I. I'm not as big as you, but I'm big. I'm 235.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the mirror here. You're what, like fucking 260, 270?
288 today.
Right. Fair enough. That's my point.
Yeah.
Okay. The human body is very analogous to automobile engines. The more cubic inches you got, the more fuel you need to turn the engine.
Okay.
Every single footstep you take burns more glucose than the average asshole at the gym spends doing leg presses or fucking squats, simply because you have so many cubic inches to move. Okay. Does the average person need additional glucose to power them through their workout? The answer is no. I don't mean to be a dick. I'm not trying to besmirch them. I'm just saying, if you're driving a fucking Prius, you don't need much fuel. We know that. That's why you have a fucking Prius. Now, if you're driving a dump truck, you're going to fill that fucker up a lot. It's a dump truck.
But I just want to interrupt and ask you this. So let's say customer, like I have a supplement company. Let's say customers who message me and say, not even my customers, let's just say normal guys that work out.
Sure.
I feel better when I take my pre and intra carbs. And they're only, let's say they're 200 pounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that valid or is it placebo?
My answer to them would be, I'm not going to call bullshit, but I'm going to say, if that's the case, we need to look at the rest of your diet.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, if eating right then helps you, what would eating over here do? Might help you more.
Yeah.
So it's the situation again. It's like that science versus bro science. I'm not going to get on my little box and go, science says, intra workout carbs are bullshit. I'm going to say, if you're getting a response, let's try and backward engineer and figure out why.
Okay. Do you know who John Meadows is, right?
I do. I know John. Yeah.
So John's got his peri workout nutrition, which is, the pre, intra, post carbs. And I've worked with John for many years, and he believes that carbs in that window, pre, intra, post, is the most important time of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Is that only valid for professional bodybuilders or people that are in that kind of circle?
That is my opinion. That is my belief. And again, and I'm not throwing anyone under the bus, but when you start to look at the nuance and intricacies of those individuals, now you find high amount of anabolics that might change things, potentially peptides. Well, that might really change things. Plus, you've got scaled up, exaggerated body weights. That almost certainly changes things. So again, it's like saying, the way I would make that analogy is like saying, you find out like race car driver X, Y, or Z, puts a little bit of, alcohol in every gas tank. And you're like, that must be why they go so fast. My answer might be, but they do have a race car. Maybe that's part of the equation.
I see what you're saying.
And again, please don't misunderstand me. I don't want to like shit on people's like supplement brands. And
no.
I'm familiar with these products, and to some degree, I'm kind of the guy in the background that nobody hears about. I've even weighed in on the ingredient lists and efficacy of some of these products with certain companies that I'm on the peripheries of. So I'm not pooing on it in any way. I'm just saying that I don't doubt for a minute that the things you do work, because you're gigantic. It works. You are proof. Yeah. However, I don't necessarily just assume that means if I do what you do, I'll look like you do.
Makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, I can appreciate that. Does having carbs, okay, let's say not for muscle growth, let's say for just performance in the gym as far as like energy goes, right?
Right.
Does having a little bit of carbs during your workout, it's not going to do anything because you already had your carbs before, right? You don't think it's necessary for like a 200-pound guy?
Well, again, there's going to be a little bit of, we have to set some parameters. What's the workout? Like, is it, 3 hours of high volume, leg training? Maybe you could conceivably move through all of your blood glucose and liver glucose in that period of time. Now, again, my argument would be, why the fuck are you doing that much volume if you're that size and on that level? But the answer could be yes.
Okay.
However, in every case, I always say, let's say this guy then does use some, intra-workout fruit or whatever, he gets better. I say, aha, that means something. That means either you're under-eating over here or you're overtraining here, both of which are bad. Let's fix them and then see if it still matters.
Okay. I got you. Moving on to fats. What is, does it, well, it does matter. I should ask you, I guess, before I answer the question myself. Does it matter where I get my fats from?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Once again, probably not in the way most people think.
Do you want to explain that?
I do very much, because this is the one that people bust my balls about more than any. My Post-it note nutrition guideline is between 0.5 and 1 grams per kilogram of body weight daily. And the difference between 0.5 and 1 is significant. That's the difference between off-season and on-season. Mm-hmm. Off-season, you take your body weight. So you put your big ass on a scale and you go, oh, hey, I'm 130 kilos. So thou shalt consume 130 grams or less of protein per day, or rather fat.
Fats, yeah.
Period. Okay. The lower, the better. But that 130 is your upper limit. You don't go over that period ever.
Okay.
And then as the contest approaches, we're going to start debiting from that down toward the 0.5.
Okay.
When we get to 0.5, if we need to continue debiting, we'll now start taking carbs.
Okay. So you don't, So when you're, let's say you're coaching somebody in off season, you're trying to build them up and put on as much mass as possible. You don't believe in like higher fats. Because 130 grams is not really high to me.
No, it's not.
And you think,
again, now here's where that's that beautiful, that sexy beauty that is science. That's when she comes into view. What do fats do? What is their purpose? Okay. In nature, they hold essentially 2 purposes. Well, 3. I'll give you 3. 1, a reservoir of energy. You get fat so you have a resistance against starvation.
Okay.
That's not really our goal here. So let's put that one aside.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the manufacture of cell walls and specific tissues and the manufacture of hormones. Okay. You didn't confess to me, but I'm going to go out on a limb here and say most of your hormones are produced by Upjohn and not fat. Okay. I'm just going to go on that. Like, okay. So chances are you're not manufacturing a whole bunch of fucking hormones.
No.
Now we're just down to the manufacture of cell walls, which is a thing. And you certainly need some. Without them, you just like ooze out like fucking goo. Yeah. But how much do you really need there? Really? Let's be fair. Again, I can be a dick and rattle off a bunch of studies, but this shit has been studied. Like the World Health Organization is very interested in how little food can we send to the third world and not let everybody die.
Yeah.
We unfortunately, we know that number, and it's really fucking small. Now, here's where I would go separate to that. If I created a diet for you, it would be red and white fish, red and white meats, lean as possible, beans and grains. My protein goal for you would be between 2 and 3. Let's shoot the high side, say 3 grams per kilogram. Wow. So you're looking for about 400 grams of protein.
Yeah.
If you eat 400 grams of protein from the foods I recommend, about 120, 130 grams of fat just falls out of that.
Yeah.
When nature is that kind to give you 2 answers from 1 question, I don't think it's wrong.
I got you. Yeah.
You see what I mean? Yeah. For me to go, no, nature's wrong. Put more fat in there.
Yeah.
Really? That seems bold. Me versus 4 or 5 million years of evolution.
But that's not really fair because, I mean, we talk about carbs. Bodybuilders take in way more carbs than they would need in nature.
No.
No. What do you mean no?
Bodybuilders wouldn't exist in nature. But if a creature managed to get that big, they would need that much fuel.
I see what you're okay. That's fair. Yeah.
Well, once again, it's scale.
Yeah.
In nature, there's zero reason to be 300 pounds. Nature does not want you that big. That means you have the highest likelihood of starving.
But when a guy is bulking, for example, and I'm assuming you don't believe in bulking. I don't know if you do or don't, but let's say when a guy is bulking in the off season, he's going to eat more than he needs. So wouldn't it make sense? So wouldn't it make sense to add fats?
No.
Just like you add carbs.
No.
Why?
A whole lot of complicated science that can be boiled down to this. Okay. To get carbohydrates into a fat cell requires a chemical process. Carbohydrates are not fat. Mm-hmm. The liver needs to convert them into something, and then that finds fat cells, and there's transmutation across the cell wall. Okay. You can't take sugar and jam it into a fat cell.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yeah.
Fat can just seamlessly transfer into a fat cell. You put 2 drops of fat on a plate, you wiggle the plate, they form 1 drop. Fat attracts fat. I know that's a horrific understatement of the complicated science, but the reality is your body can store fat like that. Okay. Literally, I'm not even exaggerating. You can be storing fat in your ass while you're burning fat in your arms. Okay. It's that fat is your body's first disposition with fat is, where do I do with this? I'll put it into fat cells. We'll deal with it later. That is literally the purpose of fat. Fat is a long-term storage mechanism. In the finance world, fat is like stocks and bonds. Okay. It's meant to be just ferreted away for the last possible eventuality. Okay. Sugar is cash.
So I got you. So why do some coaches add fats? Like they add peanut butter, they add olive oil, they add macadamia nut oil to make up calories?
Well, I mean, I think that's why they're doing it. They happen to be wrong, but that's why they're doing it. It adds calories.
Okay. So
let me hit you with something else. Let me hit you with something else. Being a bodybuilding, let's call it enthusiast. Yeah. Would you say that insulin is anabolic?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can roughly agree. Insulin's anabolic.
Yeah.
Okay. If you eat fat, what happens in your body? Is there a hormonal response to fat?
Not that I know of, no.
No, there isn't.
Okay.
If you eat carbs,
you get an insulin spike.
You get an insulin response. Yeah. So every time I eat fat, nothing happens and I run the risk of that fat lodging in my ass. If I eat carbs, I get free insulin. Yeah. So one food is legitimately stimulating an anabolic response and one is legitimately not. Which one? If I gave you the option between 2 envelopes, I said one envelope has money and one doesn't. Which one are you going to grab?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, it fucking does.
Like I said at the beginning of this podcast, I'm not arguing with you. I just like to whittle things down for myself and for because I've seen. Listen, sure. over the course of 20 years, I have worked with many coaches, and I've seen every diet.
100%.
And I've actually tried most of those.
And if I can interrupt, the reality is they all work. At the end of the day, it's total calories over total time. Yeah. My goal is to get the most anabolic action out of the least amount of calories with the least accumulation of body fat.
I see what you're saying.
I believe that to be a low-fat diet.
So if I can summarize it in my own head, just so I understand, basically what you're saying is if person A and person B are both eating 5,000 calories, you're going to get more out of this person performance-wise and muscle growth-wise with the least amount of fat versus the guy that has more fat.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe that to be accurate every single time, no matter what, regardless of race, sex, ethnicity, etc. Yeah. It's a human component.
Does digestion ever play a factor in that? This is going to be, I'm probably going to be way off on this, but what I'm about to say, but I just want to ask you about it. Fatty liver, isn't that because of eating too much sugars?
when you have a fatty liver?
It's basically a response to protracted, prolonged, problematic insulin levels affecting triglycerides. Is that a potential risk? Yes. However, again, nature's so incredibly feminine in the fact that it, no matter how mean it can be here, it always comes back and it's a little nice over here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, high calories, high carbohydrates, i.e. high insulin, never mind exogenous insulin, means that you have a greater potential for what used to be called syndrome X, which is now fatty liver disease. That's
okay.
accurate. However, what is the number one hedge against that? That would be exercise, a high level of cardiovascular exercise, no less. So it turns out that the solution to the problem is the very thing that's the hardest thing to sell to bodybuilders anyway. Do your fucking cardio.
Yeah, but what if you're doing, okay, this is a common thing. What if you're doing your cardio, you're doing your training, you're eating 5, 6, 7, 800 grams of carbs a day because you're on a carb diet, not a fat diet.
Correct.
And you have fatty liver. So
yep.
the only thing they tell, like a doctor would tell you, is you got to reduce your carbs. So
that's correct.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is, and again, this is not a debate. It's just another angle of looking at something. The point I'm trying to make is, wouldn't a 40-30-30 type diet be safer in terms of getting fatty liver while still being able to grow?
Well, that was, Dr. Barry Sears, who wrote the Zone diet. That was exactly his, tenet there.
Yeah.
My suspicion is you would just move the risk somewhere else. As your lipids go up, you would have higher triglycerides, and now you're going to have, total cholesterol or HDL or LDL or VHDL problems. I don't believe in a free ride. I don't think there's this magic formula. It's like the assholes with the Tudica. Like, it doesn't matter how much Anadrol I'm taking. I'm taking Tudica. Like, fuck you, okay? Yeah. I don't believe there's a free ride. Yeah. I think that all you can do is hedge your bets. And if you have no family history of diabetes, you have no family history of liver dysfunction, and you don't intend to be 300 pounds for 90 years, I personally don't rate it as a huge risk. Is it a risk? Absolutely.
Sure.
Am I tell you, good, go fucking do it? It's free ride. No. But I'm going to tell you that if I had the option, I'd fucking do it.
I guess the better question I should ask you is, if you're at that point, would a solution be to go on a 40-30-30 until you get things back in check?
Very possibly. Very possibly, yes.
Okay. I want to move to anabolics, because I believe that is your area of expertise. Well, I mean, they all are, but that's okay. Why are guys taking so much shit, and why are guys not looking better while they are taking more shit than normal?
It's funny. I actually have kind of the old guy view on that.
Okay.
This is the one place where I'm going to be the old get off my lawn guy.
Yeah.
I do not actually believe that is a problem of drug use.
Okay.
Now, admittedly, I have some real problems with modern drug use. I do. However, if you roll the hands of time back to the 1970s, only the really genetically elite individuals moved into bodybuilding.
Okay. I see.
You really, if you look at the specimens, I mean, Arnold was a fucking shoo-in, for fuck's sake. Yeah. His pec went down to here. Like, it was, same thing. Columbo, Zane, all these guys, they had tools.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, any asshole can, get a couple Bitcoin, jump on Amazon.com and have fucking, Superdraw delivered to their fucking mailbox.
Yeah, yeah.
They don't have any tools. Half of them don't have any passion. None of them have any fucking brains in their head. Big surprise, they're not getting the results they think they deserve. Admittedly, there's some problems with drug use, but I think the real problem is the pool of potential bodybuilders is so diluted.
Yeah.
It used to be 8 out of 10 made it because there was only 10.
Yeah.
Now it's not that way.
Yeah, I got you. There's no barrier to entry. Anybody.
Exactly. Again, I don't want to romanticize, my childhood, but like I said, from age 4 till age 10, I asked every day, can I go to the gym? From age 12 to 16, I asked every day, can I have drugs? Can I have drugs? And the answer was no. Shut up and squat. No.
Yeah.
Fuck you, kid. Go back and deadlift.
It's funny.
And then that one day somebody went, all right, you can have some drugs.
Yeah.
And then I had drugs.
I hear what you're saying, but at the end of the day, the cream still rises to the top though, right?
Yes, but again, the world is louder. You have so much more failure in your viewer finder now.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like in the 1970s, can you name one bodybuilder that didn't make it? No.
Yeah. But you also didn't hear about anybody because nobody would.
That's my point. It was there, but it was a much smaller pool and it was a much smaller number, and it just wasn't relevant to the conversation at the time.
Yeah. I mean, we're going
in this age of fake equality. Everybody thinks that I could be Ronnie Coleman too if I just did what he did. No.
But I know we're going off on a philosophical thing, but I gotta say, I think it's better that more people are trying. I happen to like it. So you look at the 70s and you think, look, the 10 guys that knew they were going to be great, those guys tried to be great. And I look at it like now 100,000 people are trying to be great. The top 10 are still going to rise to the top.
100%. That's absolutely accurate. And there's more of a commercial machine. There's a lot more. There's an industry now.
There's money to be made, and
gyms. There's chains of gyms, not niche gyms. Like, I understand that it's very much a different world, and to some degree, the world that has come to be kind of needs that churn. It needs. I get that, and that doesn't mean that I love it, but I get it.
Well, I can agree with you there. I mean, there is a part of me, like when I started in 2000. It was still far more cultish than it is now.
100%. Yeah, it was a subculture for sure. Yeah.
So I do totally understand what you mean. And in a personal sense, I kind of liked being one of the few. But now as we've moved forward, I kind of like, you know what? I kind of like that everybody gets to try, because it's still it makes the good guys look even better to me.
To a degree, I agree with that. I very much do agree with that. But I just randomly, I'll throw some drug stuff out there. One of the things that really bothers me with modern drug use is the complete and total lack of historical knowledge. I hear this all the time. Oh my God, physiques today are so ugly. We need to go back to the golden era. We need to go back to the Arnold and the Zane. Yeah. And then that same asshole brings me their drug routine, and they're taking 1,200 milligrams of fucking Sustanon.
Yeah.
And I say, Arnold took exactly dickola testosterone. None, zero. Like, if you have this hearkening back to the golden era, why don't we hearken all the way back? How about we roll back this fucking desire with testosterone that didn't exist then?
I don't think you could do that, though, because, and this may be blasphemy to say, but Arnold wouldn't be big enough to compete on today's stage.
Admittedly, I agree with that. Right. But that's kind of my point with the whole thing is they have this, if we just all look like Zane. Yeah, if we all look like fucking dance instructors, I guess we could all live on fucking Prima Ball and fucking Winstrol. Yeah, yes, we could. Yeah, but since the fucking CrossFit girl down the street is that size, maybe we need to step up our goddamn game. Yeah.
So do you think, okay, let me ask you this. I'll get into some specifics. Is testosterone the base for every cycle, whether you're cutting or bulking?
In a sense. I'm gonna veer off and give you some science, but it's necessary for the rest of the conversation.
Sure.
By the way, what I'm about to say is actually not mine. I've seen people recently plagiarizing what I'm about to say, and they think they're actually plagiarizing me. The reality is the first person I ever heard say this was Mike Zampano, who was Dan Duchesne's partner back in like 82. But goes like this. It's a family tree. Testosterone is at the top. Under testosterone is the direct descendants of testosterone. Dianabol, Trinabol, Boldenone, a couple of others. It's literally testosterone with just some little teeny tweaks.
Yeah.
Okay. Off to the right, there's another family called the 19-nor family. 19-nor testosterone. 19 is a position on the molecule. nor is Latin for without. It's testosterone minus the 19 position. And in that family, you find NPP, nandrolone, trenbolone, ment. They're all patterned off of that 19 nor molecule.
Okay.
Nelevar, a couple others. On the other side, there's an enzyme produced in your liver called 5-alpha reductase. It does exactly what it says it does. It reduces testosterone at the 5 position, which then makes it attract an extra hydrogen. Testosterone already has 1 hydrogen. This new version is now dihydrotestosterone.
Okay.
And from that, you can make Primobolan, Winstrol, Anavar, Stanosolol, Masteron.
Okay.
A couple others. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's where I'm going. Testosterone converts to estrogen and DHT at a given rate. Everything in that middle column does also convert to testosterone or to estrogen and DHT, but at a differing rate.
Okay.
Not everything in the 19 nor nothing in the DHT family does. So when I say testosterone is the core of a cycle, it's the HRT of the cycle. You could use testosterone, or you could use a greater amount of, say, dianabol, or a greater amount of, say, boldenone to fill that role. But it has to be one of the choices from that center column.
Okay, so then let me ask, and I'm by no means an expert in steroids, even though I've used them for 20 years. Sure. So if you're taking testosterone and boldenone, why do people stack them together if it's the same molecule?
Because they're a bit simple.
Oh. Okay. All right. So it doesn't ever fuck. Okay. Sorry. So it doesn't ever make sense to stack the middle column, like that middle tree you're talking about, like testosterone and boldenone, or I'm not sure that others mentioned.
In bodybuilding, the answer is pretty much no. In some niche sports, the answer could be yes. For instance, the minor alteration to testosterone to make it boldenone happens to also cause it to really strongly upregulate the production of red blood cells. Mm-hmm. So if, for instance, you were a Tour de France guy that needed gobs and gobs of red blood cells, that could be a potentiality. But sure. In that case, you're actually taking the drug almost for the side effect, not the effect.
Yeah. I got you.
But for bodybuilders, that's a very unlikely outcome that you would want that.
No, yeah, you don't. So if you were going to put together a stack, you would want to stack one from each of the columns instead
potentially, but not absolutely. Potentially. Here's, again, this is very general, not perfect, but in a general sense, of the 3 columns, the middle column is going to cover the basics: libido, mental clarity, just general masculinity. You need that. You need an amount of that. You probably even need more of that than Joe average.
Sure.
But there's a limit to how much of that you need.
Okay.
If you went to the doctor with low T, he would prescribe you, or he or she, I don't mean to be sexist, there are women doctors, but a medical professional would prescribe to you between 0.5 and 1 milligrams per kilogram weekly. So they put you on a scale, you weigh 130 kilos, we're going to start you with 75 milligrams a week. And that would be very close to a, quote, natural production. Okay. I find that a bit inadequate for, let's call it the alpha male, the gym goer.
Yeah.
So I would say you're looking for what I refer to, and I do bust people's balls. Mike Israetel, I do bust his balls for making up words. In this case, I've done it. I'm guilty. I think of what I call sports TRT. Okay. It's the hormone replacement for an alpha male.
Yeah.
I think that's about 3 milligrams per kilogram. So I'd put you on a scale. I'd multiply that by 3, and I say, that's your HRT. You're going to have plenty of aggression, plenty of boners, plenty of mental clarity. You're good. Now, what I would do is I'd say, now, what do you want? What is your desired outcome from this course? And you would rattle off some stuff. Maybe it's raise your single or get stronger. Maybe it's get faster. Maybe it's, I just need more volume. I need to be bigger. I hate the word size, but I just need more cross-sectional area. And then what I would do is I would shop the columns to create that outcome.
Okay.
It's not a matter of, these drugs are good for size and these drugs are good for strength. I would say you personally, you, Fouad, have this weakness.
Yeah.
This fixes that weakness.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Sure.
I feel exactly the same way about drug programming as workout programming. If you write a workout for somebody and they come back and they go, why am I doing hack squats? You will immediately have an answer.
Yeah.
You'll say, because your legs suck and your back is weak. I want you to do a leg exercise that doesn't tax your back. Go back to the fucking gym.
Yeah.
So when you bring me your drug protocol and you say, why am I using NPP? I would say immediately, you want maximal volume per unit milligram. We're using the NPP format because it's faster acting than decoinate. And we can titrate the dose quicker up and down over the course.
Okay.
So everything is there for a purpose. It's not just randomly, I'll have 2 of these and 2 of the. It's not a fucking smorgasbord. You're not just fucking like you're at the fucking golden saloon buffet, just like, a couple of these red ones, and no, everything's got a goddamn purpose.
All right. So you said multiply by 3 to get the sports HRT, as you would call it.
Correct. And I would round it, obviously. If you're using, a 200 or 250 milligram per mil, round it to an obvious. Don't sit there and do fucking calculus trying to get So
let's say, I weigh 300 pounds, so we're saying 900 milligrams.
No, kilograms. So you weigh 130, 100.
Oh, that's right. So multiply that by 3.
Yeah. So you're looking at a max of like 500 milligrams, probably between 400 and 500 milligrams.
What if I told you that doesn't do anything for me?
I would call bullshit on that.
Okay. I'm going to use me as an example because just to give people reference.
Sure.
500 doesn't do anything for me. It's not that actually I shouldn't say that. It makes me feel a little bit better than normal.
Right.
Okay.
I buy.
So you agree?
Now is that enough milligrams to make you competitive at the Olympia? No, it's not.
Okay.
An Olympia competitive number is probably something more like 20 milligrams per kilogram. So you're probably going up toward 2.5 grams, but only 500 milligrams of that shall be testosterone.
I see what you're saying. Okay. Oh, I see what you're saying. So you're gonna get to that 2,500 milligrams. You're just not gonna. But
I don't like. I'm gonna do something for you that I normally don't do. I don't like rattling off dosage thresholds because it gives these fuckers a free rein. Like, he's an expert. And he said, if I take this, I'll be. I don't mean that, but
I'm not trying to do that. In a
very general sense, this is what I find.
Yeah.
Sports TRT, about 3 milligrams per kilogram. So that's just kind of like that's your background. That's to keep you alpha male. A bullshit, just I go to the gym, lift weights, recreational lifter. They only need to go to 6 or 7 milligrams per kilogram total. So you take that 3 and you subtract it from the 7 and you go, all right, another 3 milligrams per kilogram. So they're in the 700-800 milligram range probably.
But you're saying the point I was trying to get to is you're saying total that's all the
Correct.
Different. Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I find that your state level competitors, they probably hang out in the 10, 12 milligram per kilogram zone. Your national caliber guys are somewhere between that and 20.
Yeah.
Your pros are almost always above 20.
But that's the tricky thing is you're saying 20, you're saying total. The point I was trying to get, I don't like to do doses on the show either, because that's kind of like, you're right. You're going to give some amateur, kid who's just starting, oh, that's what the pros are taking. I got to take it too. Right. No, I get it. The point I was trying to get to is somebody may say, I'm taking 2,000 milligrams of testosterone. You're saying that's insane. You only need a total of this. Right.
I will, again, we'll just make up fictitious pro X.
Yeah.
Who happens to be under my care. We know from historical practice that their peak physique exists somewhere around 22 milligrams per kilogram.
Yeah.
I know that the target for them on stage is 100 kilos. So their goal is they're going to walk on stage at 220. I know that they need about, 22 milligrams. So we're headed to 2.2 grams.
Yeah.
Okay. They're starting at a TRT of, in this case, they're 100 kilos, 3 milligrams per kilogram. Their testosterone is 300 milligrams. So week 1 of the course, week 0, actually, we'll start there. Week 0 is 300 milligrams, testosterone alone. And weeks going backward, -1, -2, those were all their off period, their bridge, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That was 300 milligrams. There might have been some insulin growth hormone, other stuff, but steroids, testosterone, 300 milligrams. Now we escalate slowly, week over week, toward that 2.2 grams. But we have all the testosterone we need, all the boners, all the mental clarity they fucking need. Now we add drugs for a purpose. We add NPP for volume. Maybe we add Masteron for some hardness and some estrogen control. And we do it in layers. So it goes, 3 milligrams per kilogram, and then 5, and then 7, and then 10. And then, so over time, they're escalating. 6 weeks out from the show, they're at 2.2 grams, and they roll into the show on that.
That was kind of my next question is, so you don't ever start a cycle just like 2.2?
100% no. And I will explain to you why. You seem to like the analogy-based explanations. Okay, let's consider this again, a Richard Feynman thought experiment. You walk into the lobby of the Anabolic Hotel, and there's those double doors and the button on the wall. Okay, perfect analogy for drug use. Okay, when you push the button for the elevator, the button doesn't make the elevator come. The button is just a fucking button. Behind the wall, there's gears and clutches and weights and all kinds of shit you don't understand. And the amount of time it takes for the elevator to get there does not determine by how many times you push the fucking button. It's determined by how far away the fucking elevator is. If it's 1 floor away, it comes really quick. Mm-hmm. If it's at the top floor, it takes a bit. And no matter how often you push the fucking button, you get one elevator when it's ready. Okay? Now, to make this the perfect anabolic hotel analogy, here's the difference. The button is pressure sensitive.
Okay.
It takes so many milligrams to push the button. Okay. And every floor, it takes a couple extra milligrams. The button gets harder to push as you go up.
Yeah.
You don't exactly know how it's calibrated, but you can make a pretty good assumption.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm taking 300 milligrams now, and I occasionally get an elevator.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if I start at 500, I'm going to get the first couple floors.
Yeah.
Okay. The only other analogy is you only go 1 floor at a time. So you walk into the elevator, and let's say we have the twin brothers again, and twin brother A jumps right to 2.2 grams. So he pushes the fucking fuck out of the button. He gets an elevator. He goes 1 floor. Brother 2 comes in and pushes the button with 500 milligrams.
I got you.
He gets 1 elevator. He goes 1 floor. He wasted 100 milligrams.
Yeah.
Brother A wasted 2 grams.
That's right.
Since we can all very roughly agree drugs are bad and bad for you, he who could take the least amount of drugs and still go the number of floors probably going to have the longest career.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It also makes that stupid fucking idea of front loading about the dumbest. That's probably like the 3rd dumbest thing I've ever heard Dave Palumbo say.
So
I think hello is the dumbest. Yeah, anyway. Fucking guy.
All right. So incrementally, is it ever okay? How long is the cycle? How long is it optimally the best to run a cycle? And do you dip or vary at all in the middle, or does it just keep climbing?
A whole lot of different questions you asked there at once. Okay. We'll start with the middle question. Optimally. It depends on optimally to what, for what purpose. Optimally to get ready for the Olympia, or optimally for Joe Average to make some good progress and, impress his friends.
I was thinking optimally just to build muscle, but I guess for everybody it's going to be different.
But they're not the same thing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
When it becomes your job, you have to do certain things to optimize your time and money.
Sure.
That are not necessarily appropriate to the average person. Let's start with the average person.
Mm-hmm.
There's a concept in science at large called fatigue. Not like, you lift weights and, I'm tired. There's this concept of you get in your car, you get on your motorcycle, you get on a snowmobile, and you go hell bent. It starts to fatigue. It overheats. It starts to break down. No machine can sustain maximal output for prolonged periods of time. Okay. In the case of humans, it happens to be, depending on your age, race, sex, et cetera, somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks. Just no matter how badass you are, the wheels start to fall off the wagon at the 16, 18-week range.
Sure.
So there's your fucking answer. If nature has determined that thou shalt only be able to work hard for this long, designing a course longer than that's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, does that mean every Olympian only does it in 16 weeks? No, it does not. It means that they're going to take extra risks and do extra things because their fucking job.
Yeah.
But there you are. There you fucking are.
Yeah.
So as far as time course, for a sensible, I want to get the most out of the least, somewhere between 12 and 16 weeks. I like 16 as a number. It's just workable.
Yeah.
By the way, there's also an absolute lower limit with that whole an elevator button pushing thing.
Yeah.
Imagine you run into the lobby and you push the fuck out of the button and then you leave.
Yeah.
And you never wait for the fucking elevator.
Yeah.
These people that are doing 3 and 4 week courses, they never got an elevator. They never did shit. They took drugs for the sake of taking drugs.
Sure.
So there's a minimum and a maximum for that middle of the bell curve. As far as let's call it the shape of the course, whether dosage goes up linearly or it goes up and then does something, that really comes down to the pairing or synergy of training and diet. What are the goals you're trying to achieve within that course? Why are you using those drugs?
Mm-hmm.
If the training is just linear and you're going, just to escalate, 10 kilos of body weight, then yeah. Typically, I don't like, now that's wrong. In my book, in the sports nutrition book, I have a little graph and I'm going to kind of fake it here. Very roughly, I would say it looks like this. Let's see if that'll show up on the camera. Very roughly, I would say for the average guy, a course looks like this. 16 weeks, that's 8 in the middle. The dotted line is milligrams. They go up relatively linear to the midpoint, then stay pretty steady state across the second half. Calories, on the other hand, go up quickly and then flatten out.
Okay.
So you've got this little bit of over hypercaloric, and then you kind of got that mythical bro science-y recomp toward the end.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Now, is that like the prescription for you to get ready for the Olympia? No. Is that what you probably should have been doing 15 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does. I want to ask you, when you get to, let's say you've been off and on for years and years and years, right? Like I've done that, and it came a time where I didn't feel the same on a lower dose because I got used to, I guess, let me just ask it this way. Is it possible to get used to a certain dose?
You're actually asking a whole bunch of questions. Let's start with the analytical answer. What's the difference between you at, let's just pick a low dose. Let's say, 1 mil a test. Okay. 1 mil a test 15 years ago and 1 mil a test today. What's the difference?
The difference in the test or the difference in how I feel it?
No, the real difference. The size of you.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's the real difference.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
15 years ago, 1 mil a test was, 1 milligram per kilogram.
Yeah.
Today, it's a 0.5 milligram per kilogram.
Yeah.
Now, if you scaled that, would the feeling be similar? Similar. Identical? No. And here's why. Biology is a complicated, fickle bitch. I mean, I say that daily.
Yeah.
Every time you think you know something, you are fucking fooling yourself. There's 27 layers you don't understand. That applies to me, and I'm the fucking expert.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
However, this is where shit goes off the rails. Biology is from here down.
Yeah.
This is psychology, and nobody knows how that shit works. So when you ask me, I immediately just glaze over. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what you feel. I'm not feeling it. Like, we're not talking about the same shit. Go away.
Okay. Well, how can I put this so it's more biological? My performance doesn't feel the same if I try doing it. I'll just give you the flat out scenario.
Sure.
A couple of years ago, I'm like, you know what? I think I'm a little bit older now. I want to take less shit.
Right.
So I lowered my testosterone dose.
Mm-hmm.
I did it for like 6 to 8 weeks. I was like, I'm just not feeling the same in the gym. I'm not performing the same. I call a friend. He's like, look, man, you've been doing 1,000 to 1,200 milligrams for 10 years now. You can't go back to 700 and feel the same.
Right.
Is that false? Or is it, like you said, just because my size is bigger that I need that amount?
There's multiple factors. Your size is bigger. So your bedrock dose is larger now because you're larger now.
Okay.
But there's that other factor. What are you comparing? When you say, I don't feel like I used to, you're saying, I don't feel like an Olympian. Well, duh.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean I don't feel like Fouad's twin brother who never took gear? Now I don't know. What exactly are you comparing?
Well,
do you not feel like the height of your career? Obviously you don't. But do you feel correct? Do you feel normal? I don't know. Neither you nor I have a lot of experience with normal.
I guess what I'm comparing is the way I lift, how the lifts feel, the amount I'm lifting, all of those things.
You can't perform like a world-class athlete without world-class drug use. That we all know that.
Yeah, but I guess I do know that. But what I'm saying is, can you get used to a dose or not?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. If physiologically, not so much.
Okay.
But in total, a little bit of physiological and a whole lot of psychological. Yeah, of course.
I guess what I'm asking is it like caffeine, where like if you drink 200 milligrams of caffeine over the course of a year, eventually 200 milligrams of caffeine doesn't do shit for you. Is it work that way?
That's the problem. Is it does. Again, people make that mistake all the time. It does. The difference is you're just very good at it. It's like buying a new motorcycle. The first time you get on a motorcycle, you're like, holy fuck, this thing's fast. You drive it for a year and you're like, yeah, it's my motorcycle. What of it? You get used to it. It's still fast as fuck. It's just you're really good at driving it now.
So if you increase
if you got on my slow ass motorcycle, you'd be like, this is ridiculous. How do you do this? This is ridiculous. Still faster than walking.
So if you increase your dose, it's not necessarily because you need it. It might be just because you're looking for that
100%.
initial response.
100%.
I see.
Drugs work. I know that's an absurdly stupid statement, but if people forget it, drugs work.
No, I know that. I just didn't know if your body adapted to the drugs.
Very, very nominally. Drugs work. Your body does adapt. It adapts by getting bigger, getting stronger, getting all these things. Those are the actual adaptations.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And just like the analogy I used about an automobile engine. Okay, you go from a 4-liter car to a 5-liter car. It's going to need more fuel. It's going to need more stuff. And to make it go faster, it's going to take more elaborate parts.
Sure. Okay.
That's literally how it works.
I wanted to ask you about microdosing. How do you feel? That's a new kind of, not new, but I've been hearing more and more about microdosing lately.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is it pointless or is there a benefit to it?
I fucking spit and stammer every time somebody asks me about it. It's fucking ridiculous.
Ridiculous how? It doesn't do anything, or it's...
Well, I mean, it's like, again, people say it doesn't do anything. That's not fair. Drugs work. If you get it in your body, like if you can get the drugs into your body without putting your eye out, it's going to work. There's no, it doesn't work. There's no wrong way to take drugs. However, is there a benefit to taking drugs more frequently than is necessary? The answer is no. You're just poking more holes in yourself. Think about this. Okay. Drug companies are not out to make everyone sick and ruin the world and wreck the ecology and, create global warming and all the fucking crazy shit that people think they do. Drug companies are there to make money, okay, by selling a product. They happen to make a product that allows them an awful lot of liability. Mm-hmm. Drug companies are some of the most sued, litigious, defensive companies on planet Earth. Mm-hmm. Okay. So they employ legions of really smart people to come up with drugs that work in a user-friendly format.
Okay.
So these knucklehead Gold's Gym bro scientists somehow think that they have figured out something that people that have gone to college longer than these assholes have been alive to understand the intimacies of chemistry and quantum mechanics and half-lives. Does that sound even vaguely rational to you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had Dr. Dean who is I don't know if I can't remember if he has a PhD in chemistry or I can't remember what it was. I apologize. But anyway, he was saying that the spikes in your androgen levels are more stable by doing more shots more often, smaller doses more often than 1 or 2 big doses a week. Does that make any sense? And I'm sorry I used his name. I don't want you to have to say anybody's wrong.
Well, it's one of those things where it's not a matter of wrong, it's a matter of, is it relevant?
Okay.
That's the question. No, he is not wrong. But first of all, if you actually look at blood work and you say, all right, I'm going to inject 1,000 milligrams of X drug and then plot it over time, and then you inject another 1,000 milligrams, and you plot it over time, and you do that. After about the 5th administration, there's basically no peaks or troughs. There's something called peak plasma concentration. It's a fundamental aspect of medical science. Okay, as long as you're abiding by the half-life of the drug, it's not a point. Second, and this is really relevant, does anybody know how the really generic mechanics of how a natural creature makes testosterone?
How?
Probably not. Okay.
No.
Really, really generically. Okay. Think of a map of the world. There's the equator, and then there's the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn.
Yep.
Okay. The coffee belt.
Yep.
Okay. Something very near and dear to me. Okay. The top line is too much testosterone. The bottom line is too little. And the middle is weirdly the mean, which is what most people measure. When your body manufactures testosterone, it's not like a kitchen sink faucet where it comes on and you could turn it up to really high or really low or whatever. It's on or it's off. It is a completely binary system. Okay. Make testosterone, you make it at full speed, whatever that speed is. And when you stop, you stop. Okay. So what happens is testosterone, you metabolize some, you work out, whatever. It gets down to that bottom line. The body goes, make testosterone. And then production goes full speed and it goes up. Mm-hmm. And then it goes up and it crosses that top line. And the body goes, shut her off. And then it goes down. And in a normal creature, testosterone is a sine wave.
Okay.
Otherwise known, wait for it, boys and girls, peaks and troughs. Peaks and fucking troughs. That's the nature. That's the natural kind.
Yeah.
So the thing we're doing with the once a week injection is actually smoother than nature intended it to be.
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
So let me just wrap my mind around this real quick. So what does that mean for people? Okay, if somebody says my testosterone is low,
right?
They're just naturally below that equator line, but they're still doing those peaks and valleys just on a lower scale.
Just scrunch the whole thing down small.
Yeah, yep. Yeah. So
lucky genetics.
So if you're saying then like test and anthate, for example, is a half-life of what, 1 week?
Yeah, give or take 7 to 10 days.
So if I'm taking 500 milligrams a week, I can just take it one shot, one dose. I'm done. There's no need to do the 250 or any other shit.
The only time I would and do as a professional, the only time I would suggest more frequent dosing is if total volume, if you're in that 2 gram zone, it might be unfriendly to whack back, 10 cc's of product in one day. So yes, we might spread that out. But in terms of per drug, yes, there's no benefit.
Okay. All right. That answers that. Insulin. I have a disdain for insulin.
Fair enough.
So I don't want to keep you too long because we're going on 2 hours almost. So I apologize. But I just want to cover quickly a couple things. So insulin, how do you feel about insulin? Is it, I don't like it because I feel like, and I know you're going to hate the fact that I'm about to say this, but I feel like I adapt to it very quickly and I tend to feel like I just get fat from it. And I don't get much from it that I think everybody else does. So how do you feel about insulin? Are guys wrong for taking insulin? Are they taking too much insulin? Where are your thoughts on that?
Insulin works. Insulin's cheap. However, unlike anabolic steroids, which are just incredibly user-friendly, you just fucking take them and they work. Like some of the dumbest motherfuckers on the planet have gotten really, really muscular. You know, there's many multi-Olympia winners that are not wizards.
Yeah.
It's not that hard.
Well, I don't think any of us are pharmacologists.
Yeah. Well, Ronnie's a great guy, but he's not a smart cat.
Anyway,
I'm just not about being a jerk, but
I just mean I don't think anybody it's funny because I think people think
they're all closet scientists. Yeah,
people think that because we're big, we must know everything about every drug, and I think the majority of us don't know everything. Yeah. So anyway,
fucking, it's my job and I don't. So yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But steroids are very, very plug and play. You take the right ones in the right doses and they just work like magic. Okay. Insulin has that potential. However, it is much less user-friendly. It becomes about the timing, the organization, this specificity. And one of the major problems is athletes in general, their initial familiarity with drugs is just taking it and it works.
Yeah.
And they're not familiar with just how detail-oriented you really must be to get insulin to do the things they want it to do.
Yeah.
Does it have that potential? Yes. If you look at physiques from the middle 80s and you look at physiques from the middle 90s, you are looking at the difference that insulin brought to sports.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, yes, it's a very, very powerful tool, but it is literally that almost like pro-level tool. Like it's very hard to have a job and do all these things that people need to do if you're walking around worrying about momentary blood glucose and insulin dosings and how far meals, and that's very difficult.
How specific is it? Like, if I'm not sure if you prescribe it to your athletes or not, but if you were going to, how specific is it? Is it like, are you talking about guys taking it like between meals or taking it just before the gym, or like how often are guys taking a day? Because I've heard like pre-post workout kind of thing. I don't know if
much. Well, once again, you have to remember, I work with athletes outside of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
And insulin has a lot of utility in other places besides bodybuilding.
Okay.
For instance, track and field, it has a huge amount of utility. One of the major limiting factors in track and field is not muscular fatigue, but it's metabolic fatigue. It's the ability to have enough fuel to do the next workout. Insulin speeds the storage of fuel, glucose, carbohydrates, glycogen. Yeah. So the use of it in say, for a 100-meter, 400-meter sprinter would be considerably different than it would be for a bodybuilder.
Sure.
So there's a lot of answers there. I'm assuming you want sort of the bodybuilding.
In bodybuilding, yeah.
I would give you a real generic example. As I laid out, carbohydrates move a little bit from the last meal to the first meal, so you've got a slightly declined consumption of carbohydrates. First thing in the morning, low-fat, relatively high carbohydrate breakfast, a predetermined dose of a very long-acting insulin, like say Lantus.
Okay.
Maybe let's just say 1 IU per 10 kilos of body weight. So 100-kilo guy, he's going to whack back 10 IUs of Lantus first thing in the morning.
Okay.
3 or 4 hours later, he's headed to the gym. We might do half of that in our insulin pre-workout.
Okay.
Then maybe 3 or 4 hours later, we do another 5 with an evening meal.
But isn't the R like
That's about a 4-hour window of action.
I thought R was like an 8.
About 4, a window of action. There's a difference between a half-life and active life.
Okay.
The active life about 4 hours.
So I thought guys were using Humalog more than R because it just hit faster, or is shorter.
Yes, they are. Yes, there's loads of people doing that.
But you don't like Humalog.
Yeah, they're wrong.
Why?
I'm not being a dick. They're not wrong. For instance,
but why do you?
I don't think it's wrong to name drop. Milo Saishev is very famous for that sort of approach, and he's not wrong. But he's not wrong in the same way that I don't necessarily prescribe training to failure. Okay. But if you chose to train in the Dorian Yates way, then training to failure is a fundamental part of that. Like, you have to do that. So it's kind of like there's a divide in the road, and once you go down that road, now you have to do these things because they're part of that road. They're the tolls on that highway. I would take a different highway. My mantra across the board is longer, lower, slower. If it's fast, I don't like it. You fall off a motorcycle going highway speeds, that's bad. Fall off a motorcycle going really fast, that's bad-er. I don't like fast.
I got you.
But if you choose the fast road, now you're committed to that. Now you got to eat the carbs, take the insulin. Go to the gym, take the insulin. And it works. I.e., see the stellar success guys like Milos have. It works, but it's not for me. It's just too interactive, and there's too much risk to fall off the motorcycle.
Sure. I get it. Safer road. What about GH? How does GH fit into this? And then we'll kind of wrap it up there. I just want to touch on this last thing because GH is such a popular thing. One of the main questions I get with GH is GH necessary for muscle growth? Some people think it's a cosmetic drug. Some people think it's very powerful. Where are you on that?
All of the above.
Okay.
Is it necessary for muscle growth? No. I mean, Arnold, Franco, Zane, those guys were really muscular. They took no growth hormone. So that's just a fool's thought there to think it's required. It's not. Is it help? Is it beneficial? Yes. In my mind, the real benefit that growth hormone has brought to modern sports is the one nobody's talking. We just had a Super Bowl. We just had Tom Brady win fucking 6th, 7th Super Bowl, whatever.
7, yeah.
Clear your mind. Think back to the ever so distant past of 1985. There were 0 40-year-old athletes. None. Yeah. They didn't exist. There were no 40-year-old athletes.
Yeah.
Here we are, 21st century. Every athlete worth their weight is fucking 40 years old.
Yeah.
Coincidence?
True.
Maybe not. I don't think the genetics are any better. I don't think training is any better. Food still has the same shit in it. Testosterone, still testosterone. What's the big difference? That there be growth hormone. Growth hormone has wildly extended careers and bulletproofed athletes against stupid fucking training practices.
I got you. Okay. So is GH a muscle building hormone?
Absolutely.
Peptide.
Not exclusively. There's the big difference. Androgens almost exclusively build muscle. Mm-hmm. They have what's called a specificity. Okay. Or a select in pharmacology terms, it's called selectiveness.
Okay.
The receptor that those drugs bind to almost exclusively exists in contractile muscle. There's a little bit in the brain, there's a little bit in some other organs, but almost always you take steroids to dose muscle mass. Okay. Growth hormone is a much broader spectrum compound. Almost every tissue in the body has receptivity to ultimately what is the IGF-1. Your liver converts somatropic hormone into IGF-1, and connective tissue, skin tissue, hair tissue, brain tissue, even fucking tissues in your eyes are receptive to IGF-1. So yes, it builds muscle, but a scad of other things as fucking well.
Can it build muscle by itself, or does it need?
Yes.
Does it need to be? It can.
Well, see, again, you got to watch your language really carefully because it's never truly by itself. It's not.
I agree.
Real quick, I'll give you a 2-minute life cycle on growth hormone, just so you understand how hard it is to understand. Whether your brain makes it or you take it. So growth hormone enters your bloodstream. Okay, it's a 191 amino acid chain, a polypeptide called somatropic hormone. Okay, that circulates in your blood. It does exactly no growth. Okay, in its whole 191 state, it signals to certain tissues to be prepared to grow. It doesn't actually cause growth. It causes preparatory state, causes stem and satellite cells to literally, if you think of muscle, like you look at the surface of a piece of meat, it's just like these smooth, flat fibers. Well, the little teeny little seed cells pop up and they're now ready to grow. They don't grow, but they're ready to.
Yeah.
Simultaneously, its presence signals to, for instance, the pancreas to produce glucagon and lipase. Now, those hormones go out and they do what they do. Lipase causes the release of fatty acids from adipocytes, and glucagon circulates, gets to your liver. Your liver, in response to glucagon, contributes sugar to the bloodstream. Okay. So now your blood sugar goes up. Mm-hmm. Well, when your blood sugar goes up, your body's natural response to that is release some insulin.
Yeah.
So now you've got this situation where cells are prepared, fuel, i.e. fat and sugar, has been put in the bloodstream, and now insulin has been released, partly to quell the excess fuel, and partly because your liver then takes basically a snapshot. Your liver then takes a measurement of how much androgens, how much insulin, how much sugar, how much amino acids, and how much inflammation, i.e. you've been training, causing damage. And it takes a measurement of all these things, does some kind of equation we don't really understand, and then decides how much of this magical IGF-1 to produce.
Okay.
Then the IGF-1 comes out the back of the liver, finds those cells that have been prepared, binds to them, drives muscle growth.
Okay. And all that happens when you inject GH.
Or your brain makes
it
on its own.
GH. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So in saying that, when is the best time?
Perfect question for a really drawn out answer. I'm going to give you the fucking hyper capsulated version.
Okay.
Follow that chain of events. The answer is, where do you want or not want to interrupt that? Okay. Growth hormone, preparatory, dumps sugar and fat into your bloodstream. Let's say now you get on a treadmill. There's fat in your bloodstream. You start treadmilling away. You're burning fat.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay? However, that also means now there's limited amount of energy available for anabolism. So you're siphoning off energy over into the treadmill, which is great for your condition.
Yeah.
Probably limited for your muscle growth.
I see.
There's just scraps left over for muscle growth. Now let's play that same scenario, but you're falling asleep and dreaming about massiveness. You're not burning any energy. You're not interfering. So the process can play out fully funded.
Yeah. Yeah. I got you.
Maximal muscle growth. So minimal fat loss.
So really when you take it depends on what your goal is.
100%. It is a behavioral dependent process.
Wow. So anybody who says, morning post-workout, that's the way, which is what I've always done, is not always the right way, depending on what your goal is.
Correct. If your goal is absolute hypertrophy and or soft tissue recovery, before bed is absolutely the best answer. Now, I'm going to throw in one little layer of I didn't think of that. When does your body produce most of its growth hormone?
When you're sleeping.
Yeah. Do you really think that 500,000 years of evolution got that wrong?
Yeah, no, I understand that. But wouldn't post-workout make sense as well, though?
I didn't say it doesn't make sense.
No. Sorry,
let me make sense in a context.
Let me rephrase the question. Wouldn't post-workout make sense for hypertrophy? Like to build up, because you've trained, you're ingesting nutrients, you're sitting down, you're not doing anything. Wouldn't that be a good time for it?
I would say it's not a bad time, but I would also say it's not quite as good as sleeping.
I know. I'm just trying to think if you're going to split it. Okay, that's actually another question. So let's say you're taking 8 IUs a day.
Now you've asked the correct question.
Yeah.
I would say very roughly, and I've kind of people out there might be somebody that goes, wait a minute, I've kind of flip-flopped a little on this answer. But depending on who I'm talking to, I'd say put a maximum cap around 4 IUs.
Okay.
So any one dosing more than 4, maybe 6. I've said 6 in the past. I have.
Yeah.
There's a threshold where more probably isn't better.
Yeah.
So let's just say you're going to take 8. I would say 4 before bed, because that's your absolute most important. You want that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now we look at the rest of the day and we say, what's next most important? Maybe you're not as lean as maybe I think you could be. We put that first thing.
Sure.
Maybe you are as lean as I think you should be, and your workout happens to be more than, say, 4 hours before bed.
Yeah.
I'd go workout centric. So it's a matter of plug and play based on first, second, and third choice.
But nighttime is always the first choice for either way.
For anabolism, yes.
Yeah.
For fat loss, no.
No. Okay. I got
Which is why I would take like the fitness chick. We would go pre-bed, all off season, contest time, we'd roll it around to morning. And then we'd build that morning dose up to like say 4. And then if they've got the funding to go beyond 4, we'd move it to workout.
Okay. So for fat loss purposes, you're not going to do it at night. You're going to do morning before your cardio and before training.
Correct.
Okay. We've been on for over an hour. Is there anything you want to touch on, promote, anything before we wrap up?
I am terrible at commercialism, but as I mentioned, I have an ebook. And I also, we didn't talk about this, I do operate a members only website on performance enhancing drugs.
What is the website?
And that is members.teamevilgsp.com. All of my everything is Team Evil GSP. So my website is Team Evil GSP, my Facebook, YouTube, all that shit. The member site is members.teamevilgsp.com. $15 a month, $150 a year. I do 2 1-hour Q&As a week in the member site. There's about 200 hours of Q&As dived in there. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time. And there's about 100 hours of me doing my thing. Oh.
This is your page.
Yes, it is.
These are your Q&As from 21.
You are far more savvy than I am.
Look at this.
Yes.
3 years worth of Q&As. Jeez.
Yes.
Courses.
Yes.
Nutrition. Wow, you got everything in here.
Well, no, I got an awful long to-do list, but I have a lot of material in there. It's my humble opinion, it's worth $15.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you. Sorry, I didn't hear how much you said. It's $15 a month.
$15 a month, $150 a year.
Wow, that's great. If I signed up, I wouldn't have to ask you all these questions.
But then you would have missed out on the fucking anger and sarcasm.
Yeah, it's all good. Listen, I appreciate you coming on.
100%.
It's been a huge lesson in a lot of different ways. Maybe we can have you back on if you have time and you care to explain more about basic nutrition, training, and drugs to the rest of us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Okay.
Be happy to.
Thank you very much, Broderick. I appreciate your time, and I'll get this up right away, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Great.
Bye-bye. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share with your friends, and like the video. And if you get a chance, check out the description for all the different links to all the different places you can find Hostile and myself. And lastly, check out hostile.com for our new line of supplements and all of our apparel and gear. Thanks again for watching.